speaker, Tommy Nelson. Tommy is the senior pastor of Denton Bible Church in Denton, Texas. He served on staff at Denton Bible for nearly 40 years. One of 4 boys, Tommy grew up in Waco, Texas, where he played football and baseball. Tom was the quarterback for the North Texas Mean Green and holds degrees from the University of North Texas and Dallas Theological Seminary. He's taught over 150 Song of Solomon marriage conferences nationwide as the featured speaker for a number of video series, the author of several books, including We're both married, and together have given Tom and Teresa 6 grandchildren. Would you please join me in welcoming a man who boldly proclaims truth, even when truth is countercultural, Pastor Tommy Nelson.
I am delighted to be here. Cole Johnson, Kevin Mosley, they said, could you come and exactly. And you'll see where I'm going. My father, born in 1914, and if you had asked him, do you cheat on your wife, do you lie, do you steal, my father would have said absolutely not. If you had said to him why, he would have said it's wrong. If you had said to him, says who, he had said God, the Bible. Now my father was not, at that time anyway, a Christian. I led him to Christ just weeks before he passed away. But he was not at that time a Christian. He was not in any way a Bible student or a defender of the Christian worldview. But my father and his generation, the consensus back in 1950 when he gave me birth, was that of a Christian worldview. It is called the Christian grace of Christ, the Old and New Testaments, that shaped really Christianity. It shaped from the 4th century on. The Americas was the Christian worldview. And your worldview is the spectacles and interpret the world around you. It's the way you connect the dots, that with just the naked eye you can see nature, you can see order and unity and diversity, you can see man, you can have a sense of morality, of right and wrong. And the dots, but how you give meaning to the material, how you give meaning to the mechanical and the mathematical. That comes from your assumption as to their origins and to their final meaning and to their ultimate destiny. And that is called your worldview. It has been said that the most important thing about you or a culture is what you think about God. And destiny. That is the meaning. In other words, you can, one scholar said, you can try your best to draw a circle with your pencil. It's a circle because it corresponds to the ultimate. The fountain of your existence and of a culture's existence is in what that culture assumes about God. And that is why the Western culture has been the greatest of all cultures. And I say that without any hesitation. It has been the greatest of all cultures because it found its fountain. It found its origin in the Garden of Eden and at Mount Sinai and in Jerusalem and in Calvary in the Old and the New Testaments. Amen? That is why the whats ended up like they are in our culture. It is because of our assumptions about God. The Western worldview, infinite personal God, a God who is Trinity. And as a result, the most important things that you observe, a universe with unity and diversity, does not contribute to unity, ultimately. Origin in the three of God that is himself personal, of which man is his countenance, that man is in his image. Once you get rid of God, now man your view of right and wrong being final right and wrong, unless you have an infinite personal God. He cannot just be infinite, he must be personal. Otherwise you end up with Allah, that is infinite, but is himself not Trinity, and he is not personal. And thus you don't have a standard for personhood and for ultimate right and wrong. That this God who is Trinity is finally loving and finally just and finally good. And evil, that is the opposite of those, is a real evil, not an imagined evil. It's a very real evil. And so if I get rid of God and its interpretation, get rid of right and wrong and the basis of civilization, and I get rid of, in the doctrine of the Trinity, you have the doctrine of procession, a Father, and the Son is eternally compliant to one that Jesus said is greatest of all. And the Holy Spirit is the one who glorifies the Son, who does the will of the Father, both in creation and in the new creation. And thus in society, where you have the rulers and the ruled, elders and the people, where you have a father and a mother and children, where you have bosses and employees, and you have owners, and you have those that do business with you. You have now the standard for loving authority and willing, honoring submission. In other words, the most important planks in all of society are unity and diversity, the managedness of man, right and wrong, and the order of society. Amen? And you get those in the first breath of your body. That in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Time, space, mass, universe had its origin in a God who gives it meaning to all that is material. That is the Western worldview. And thus we see God as distinct from the creation. We see nature not as God. Man is not God. That he has and it has its meaning from him. The family now has meaning. Sexuality now has dignity and it has rules. It is not the concupiscent drives. It now has meaning. That life has meaning. Life in the womb has meaning. When was it that John the Baptist leaped in the womb? He was 5 months in the womb. Mary appeared in his presence. Christ was a zygote. And he leaped. That's the Bible. In other words, as Voltaire said, if there was no God, then we need to invent one. And he was right. Man without God becomes rogue. And there is no more frightening thing than a creature with a will that is surmounted by God, that has lost his concept of God. You now have a renegade. Do we have a countenance to a rogue human in the Bible? Yes. There was an angel beneath God that rebelled and said, I will be like the Most High. We called him Lucifer. He came to be called Satan. And that is what happens when an animal, you don't have to worry about going rogue. They're hardwired. They do what they do because they're meant to do what they do. Why does a dog scratch? He is a dog. Write that down. He must scratch. Why does a cat cough up hairballs? He must. Because God created him in catness and thus hairballishness. I amaze myself sometimes. And thus, whenever you have a human that is the most dangerous of creatures, is an angel or a human, because they are not hardwired. They have choices. And the day that you break free, this is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is the tree where you, by eating it, will rebel against God and attempt to be God yourself and know good and evil in life without God. In the day that you do it, you will surely die. You're a dead man. The most important part of an astronaut's gear, if he's in a spacewalk, is his tether. That tether has to hold him to the mothership. I don't know how much a tether costs. I think you get it at Hobby Lobby. All right? They're not that expensive. But if you break that tether, all of your exploration is done, and you are sucked into the black, dark vacuum of space. And so a human being must be tethered, not simply to God, but to Yahweh, to the I am. There's never the I will be or the I was, but the unchanging, immutable, perfect God. And so, are you with us so far? That was the worldview of our culture. And the only problem with the American culture was our inconsistency to live in keeping with it. That it was not the inherent problems of the philosophy. It was the problems of humans to be in keeping with the new covenant of grace given by God through His Son, whereby man can now obey God. That was our problem. Well, in the 1900s, essentially, when the earth moves, waves now begin, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger until they slam home where you live, and they wipe away everything. A tsunami occurred in our culture in the late 1800s into the 1900s. We changed our spectacles. It was in my day, I remember it. We changed our spectacles. We fired God. We got rid of God and His Word. Francis Schaeffer said that unless there is an absolute whereby we can judge society, society is absolute. Which is no problem if society is perfect. But if they are fallen, there is now hell to pay. And we got rid of God in the 20th century. Specifically about the late 1500s. How many of you old guys remember the beatniks? Remember a beatnik? Then a flower child? Well, that was the result of the rejection of the worldview. We changed spectacles. We got rid of God and we made man now and the universe the arbiter of truth and dignity and purpose. First, it gave us the modern worldview, and that is where man tried to achieve right, wrong, and order without God. He did not believe there was not right and wrong and order. He believed there was, but you didn't find it from God. You were going to find it from him. It started when a fellow named Rene Descartes entered into his room and got rid of his Bible and went inside of himself to find ultimate truth. Not in the Garden of Eden, but in Rene Descartes. And he came up with, the only thing he was sure of is that he was doubting. If he was doubting, he was thinking. If he was thinking, he existed. Therefore, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore, I am. I think. All right. That was Rene Descartes. And it started a set of dominoes from rationalism to empiricism to skepticism to nihilism to existentialism. It started a series until ultimately we got to postmodernism. And that's where you no longer felt that there was truth out there. Postmodernism felt that there was no truth. One man put it like this: philosophy is a blind man in an alley at midnight looking for a cat, a black cat. He said, Christian worldview believes that the black cat can be seen as God turns on the light. From outside of man he gets light, and he can find the black cat. Modernism says it's a blind man in an alley at midnight looking for a black cat with no light, but he believes the black cat is there. There is truth. He just can't find it. Postmodernism is a blind man in an alley at midnight looking for a cat, a black cat, and the black cat is not there. There is no truth. In other words, you just get your motor running, get out on the highway, looking for adventure and whatever comes your way. Is anybody with me? Like a true nature's child, we were born. Oh, you don't know Romans, do you? But you know Stephanie. That's a sad testimony. That's what it was. Is anybody here from the 60s with me? Anybody here from the 60s that can remember the 60s? That was postmodernism. And we gave birth to a philosophy where you chose what your existence was. You played God. It was called existentialism, where man became God. And that was my high school years. We lost confidence in the Bible. We lost confidence that there was final truth. Especially after World War II, where all the Reformation nations killed each other. Did y'all know that? Germany, England, France, America. They all just killed each other. So we lost all hope in final truth. We looked at the post-World War II world that was personal peace and fluency. And the baby boomers, of which I was one, Stockton, that's you too. We ain't got much to boom anymore. We got rid of God. The greatest generation, they still held to it. Our guys, we got rid of God, and pretty soon we moved to the east. We moved to transcendental meditation, astral projection. And there was a means by which you could get out of yourself and find a paradigm outside of the natural world. It was called drugs. It was peyote, mescaline, LSD. And so we tried it. And what we got was Manson and horror and bloodshed. That's what we got. The greatest virtue of the 1950s, you know what it was? It was justice. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Martin Luther King. We were looking for justice. From the 60s on, we weren't looking for justice. We gave up on it. Now we just looked for tolerance. That there was no final truth. And the guy who said there was truth was wrong. And it gave rise to what is called secularism. You know what secularism means? Secularum means ages. We get the word sequence. And it simply means you're looking at life to the exclusion of God. It is man himself. It is humanism plus time and events equals secularism. It's where you get rid of God. In the womb, man, the dignity of man, government, and you get rid of any sense of right and wrong. And you get rid of ultimate law. You know, when we sing one of our hymns, God Bless America, we sing, confirm our soul in self-control, our liberty in law. You can't have an America. You can't have freedom without paradigms of absolute, infinite personal gods who speak. You cannot do it. Man can't subsist without the Trinity. He will implode. He will disintegrate. The integration point of his life is gone. He is man that has lost his tether. Well, are you ready to kill yourself yet? Okay, we'll continue. You're saying, boy, appreciate this guy, Cole. And as a result, what did we get out of this? If I don't want the baby, I ain't got to have the baby. Because I'm the final word. If he's inconvenient, I will turn him into mulch. That's what we did. We turned what used to be called sodomy into that which was gay. We now have marriage lost its, God made them male and female. You get tired of your mate, we have no standard for unconditional love. We have no standard for a cross. We have no standard for loving authority and willing submission. And so you just punt it. No longer can you use Christian marriage as an apologetic for the Bible. We're as bad as they are. Murder, violence, gangs. We got words now like drive-bys. And basically, as Robbie Zacharias said, when you get rid of God, the first thing to go is just human decency. You can't watch TV no more. I have to watch at least 2 Andy Griffiths a day just to come home to Mayberry. As far as human pleasure, hedonism is the ultimate end in itself. Even patriotism, the idea that a country has goodness in and of itself to be preserved, has given way to globalism. The government, and these are called the 4 biggies: government, the media, the arts, and then education. Those were the things that held us together through the church. And now those things have become adversarial. I don't know about you, but I can't let my grandkids watch TV. Not without some kind of monitor. I saw pornography for the first time when I was 17. A kid now sees it between 8 and 11. He's got access to it. And so it has taken what the psychologists call basic innocence and basic trust from the child. The returns are now coming in on secularism. Secularism is the newest kid on the philosophic block. Did y'all know that? It's never been tried. And we're trying it. And the returns are ugly. We are, now what's my point? Because even in the church, there has been a concession within the church to secularism. No longer can you attend a church because they hold to the Bible, in remembrance of me, communion, a cross on the top, to where the Son of God, according to the Word of God, came to atone for the sin of man under the justice of God, as the Bible said he would. Now you've got to find a church somewhere that still holds to inerrancy, the deity of Christ, his death upon the cross, his bodily resurrection, justification by faith. Now you've got to fight. You know how many seminaries are in our country that still hold to historic Christian inerrancy? 10 out of 50 states. That's all that we've got. A lot of Bible colleges. But as far as graduate level seminaries that train the theologians, writers, authors, and pastors, we got 10, maybe 12. And they're constantly fighting the ebb and flow of culture. Well, my point, now I've said all that to say this. High schoolers, where are the high schoolers anyway? I can't see them real well. I can smell the testosterone. Nobody over here. High schoolers, my point is, unlike my father's day, you and I, Christians, we're no longer the home team. You dig? We're no longer the home team. When I was a high schooler, we would always have pastors come and speak to our secular school. I didn't know what the word secular schooling meant because we had no Christian schools. You know why? We didn't need them. All of my teachers were World War II veterans, including the women. You know, hard women. And if you cursed, if you did anything at school, in all of my years in Waco at school, I saw 2 incidents of a student speaking impertinently to a teacher. One, I can still see him, Jack Kessner, in the 4th grade. And he was hauled off. We never saw him. He was gone. And then Brian Rogers in the 6th grade. He did not like the fact that a 94 was a B, or was not an A, but a B. And he slammed his hand down. I can still see him like it was yesterday. I wake up at night screaming sometimes. He said, in Rosebud, Texas, a 94 was an A, not a B. Well, Mr. Wade Herring, our teacher, my 6th grade teacher that flew bomber missions in World War II from McGregor, Texas, he came over his desk and he grabbed Brian Rogers from Rosebud, Texas, and he disappeared out the door. You ever seen that scene in Shawshank Redemption where the guy screaming and he ate right through himself? That's what it was. And we all sat in silence. And Brian Rogers from Rosebud, Texas came back in about 10 minutes later. None of us moved. And he sat there and he stood up and said, I'm an idiot. I ain't never gonna do it again. Thank you, Brian. So we don't know what they did to Brian. They fixed Brian Rogers. If I cut up, how many of you old guys remember when you cut up in school, the coach beat you? Then you went home and your mama beat you. Then your daddy came home. And mama had you like a trout on the line right here. And said to your husband, remember she'd say, beat him. Beat him long. Beat him hard. You beat me to the glory of God. Saying hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Those were the good old days. Is anybody here with me? Students, now we got to have Legacy Christian Academy. You know why? We got to have it now because we're not the home team anymore. You can't, if teachers cross, we began every day with prayer in Waco Richfield High School. At lunchtime, they rang a bell and you went dead silent and you prayed. And in all of my 6 years of secondary education, I can't remember one peep being made by one student in a class of 483 during the prayer time. Nobody said a word. There was law, there was order. In our home, students, when I lived in Waco, Texas, you got out of the car, you left the keys on the dash. All right? We never locked our home, ever, because you weren't supposed to steal. The Bible said, thou shalt not, and you didn't. So we never worried about it. How many of you old guys remember heading off on your bicycle early in the day and disappearing all day? And your parents never worried because there was stuff you weren't supposed to do. I remember one time playing touch football. Y'all mind me telling you my life story? We were playing touch football, and I was in junior high, we got to cussing. All right? And I'd never heard the curse words. I thought they were pretty good, you know. And so I started chanting. And some guy came out of his house, some old guy, and he walked over there and grabbed our ball and circled us up. And he went up and down us, and he started asking for names. And like an idiot, I gave him mine. Where do I live? I told him, gave him my phone number. I got home. And my mom and daddy were waiting on me. Come here. And they took me out in the back. And my daddy said, what did you say? And I told him what I said. And that was the last time I cursed where my parents could hear. Was I a hypocrite? Yes, I was. Praise God. One of the most marvelous things in the country is hypocrisy, you know? Because hypocrisy, at least you tip your hat to right. We're not even hypocrites anymore. Let me move on. Right. And as a result, in the last election, something happened, didn't it? Something happened. The country said, no. That's all. Be real specific. The country said, hell no. I'm the first curse word in this building. All right. We said, no. That's all. We're done. You're gone, you're gone, you're gone. You guys that have simply a memory, an echo of right and wrong. You guys that still have a chain on the pit bull. Y'all take over. What happened? We had riots. We set campuses on fire. We beat up guys that voted Republican. On a lot of campuses, the Republican kids had to hide away. And I just got back from Austin and I found out that in conservative coalitions within state government, they have to meet in private so the secularists don't find out and come and harangue them like Sodom did Lot for standing as judge over them. And they meet in private. That's an miracle. So it was a testimony of our disintegration. Students, I'm sorry, but this is the world that you were born into. We didn't hand you very good. I asked my granddaughter, Gabby, she's 12, and I need a husband for her. So, any of you like to volunteer? But anyway, I said, is there drugs in your high school? She said, oh yeah. Not high school, she's 12 years old, 6th grade. Yeah, there's drugs in the 6th grade. I couldn't imagine that. I said, really? Is there homosexuality? Yeah. Is there same-sex? Got one. Gender confusion? Yeah. And she just went right down the list of stuff. And I thought, and this is her father is a Secret Service agent. That's my son. I have 2 sons that are both put on the They would kill you for a living. I'm so proud of them. But these are kids that are raised good, but man, it's a confused world that's out there. You know what confusion means? The word fuse means there's no delineation between anything. You can't separate it. It's all amalgam. There's no distinctiveness. There's no right, wrong. There's no standard. With fusion is the word confused. And it means you can't separate anything. You can't delineate right and wrong. You're confused. You don't know the difference between normal and abnormal. That is called confusion. Okay. Incidentally, who's the Bible say is the author of chaos or confusion? Satan. And so, students, what do? I conclude. We got to have heroes. You students, I want you to know the greatest heroes of the Bible: Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Nehemiah, Ezra, Esther, Mordecai. These were all people, Jeremiah, that were in the deportation to Babylon, where the culture was adverse and the heroes rose up. David rose to greatness when Saul wanted him dead. Jesus rose to greatness when he would follow, Father, take this cup from me, not as I will, but you will. And he said, I drink it. And he was obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. The highest honor you can have is a cross, where everybody in that culture sees the stand-up guy and says, that guy is different. He's got to die. The light has got to be put out by the darkness. And so this is the time, you adults, we're going to start seeing from these guys in the next few years, heroes that right now are in junior high. They're going to rise up. Thomas Paine wrote in the Sunshine Patriot as the war swirled about him. Now is the time that tries men's souls. Meaning, now is the time that we will find out what we are made of. And so we're about to, with these guys. They're about to become our future, our tomorrow. Students, what are you going to have to do? Number one, you better be smart. And you better know that secularism has failed. And whenever you get rid of the infinite personal God in the Bible and Christ for the vacuous system of our day, you have exchanged a Mercedes for a skateboard. This is the best. Man has always been looking for God on his own, and once he finds him, he has an aversion in his conscience, and he gets rid of him. And so, secularism has not worked. Secularism produces Jason Bourne, where you are face down, unconscious, in the ocean, tossing and turning, wounded with amnesia, and you don't know who you are. And that is why Jason Bourne, for all of the movie, is trying to find somebody that can tell him, who am I? How did I get here? Who hates me? Why do they want me dead? How can I be redeemed? And why do I have the innate ability to kick people in the lips? You know what I'm saying? Because Matt Damon has that ability, he doesn't know where it comes from. Man without God is Jason Bourne. He doesn't know who he is. And so students, that worldview that is hoisted on you, it can't work in any way. And remember that. Do nice guys finish last? Sometimes. But bad guys always go to hell. Okay? I said that to a guy in the gym one time. He did. He said, you know, nice guys finish last. I said, yeah, bad guys go to hell. And he went, oh. He didn't know what to say. I had it. Don't take a whole lot to argue. Oh, wait. Sorry. Number two, Young studs, you need not just to have that conviction, but you need to have moral conviction that says, I will go this far and I will go no further. I don't care what Hollywood or the media says. I will not mess with a girl that has not made the commitment to be my wife. I will not have it. I will not mess with a boy unless he has earned the right to my body by his faithfulness to follow God. There are some men and women who can't be married, ever, because they have no sense of who God is. You have men that are called rogue males and women that are called man-eaters. And neither one of them can ever be married to anybody. And so, young studs, you got to have a conviction that I believe in the Bible, I believe in the God who gave it, I believe in man in the image of God, I am not amoral, I do not abort children, I do not do lousy work on my ethics in my job. Whatever I do to the glory of God. And you're going to have to be, in this culture, a rebel against this culture. You're going to be like Daniel, that made up his mind he will not defile himself with the king choice food. Daniel, you got to eat this food we sacrifice to idols. Daniel said, not now, not ever. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you got to bow down to this idol. No, then we will throw you in the fiery furnace. Well, you throw me then, because our God can deliver us, but even if he doesn't, let it be known, I don't go this far. I stop right here. I will work for you. I'll be the best employee you got. I will counsel you on your divine dreams and tell you what they mean. And I will tell it straight to you. But this I will not do. Joseph, I will be such a good son that my brothers will hate me as a good shepherd. Then they can throw me in slavery, and I will be such a good servant that they will elevate me and give me the checkbook to Potiphar's house. And if I get thrown in jail for what I did not do, they will end up giving me the keys of that jail. I will be Otis Campbell. Does anybody know what I'm talking about right there? Andy Mayberry, they gave Otis the keys to the jail. Because he had convictions. I don't care where you put it. And the day came that they made him Prime Minister of Egypt. Did he have to do anything different? Nothing. He simply behaved his convictions. Christ will be obedient to the point of death. And before he dies, he will take care of his mother. Son, behold your mother. Mother, behold your son. He will lead this guy to Christ. He will lead the executioner to Christ. He will take the spit. He will take the hits. And then he will commend his soul to God after he atones for sin. That is when you're on the varsity. That's what Jesus will do. And so, you have to have convictions of where you will not go. And then thirdly, you can't be eccentric, off-center. You got to be excellent. You can't be different. You got to be better than what they do. You got to be the best. When I was a young guy, how many of you guys remember Woodstock? Sex and Mud, all right, in New York. Woodstock was this festival of the 60s, and then it was followed by Altamont, where it erupted in violence, and they hired the Hells Angels to bring order. Not a good hire. And they ended up beating a guy to death, and they set the place on fire. That was called the death of the 60s. It didn't work. And it ended up in drugs, and then all the pagans came into Haight-Ashbury, and it ended up in sex and drug traffickers, human traffickers, pedophiles, you name it. That's why, whenever you went into what was it called? The something park, Citizens Park in San Francisco? People's Park. Whenever you went into People's Park in San Francisco, you walked through a big frame. You had to have a different frame of reference. You got rid of God. And by the mid-60s, they officially had a burial of the hippies because it didn't work. All we got out of it was Manson and drug addiction and venereal disease. The 60s didn't work. That's why we had the 70s and all went back to the Carpenters and Catherine and Tennille. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It was just the rejection of the whole thing. And God, how many of you guys remember dancing in the 70s? Stockton, are you with me? Remember how great it was to be a white guy in the 70s? Because anybody could dance. There were no rules on dancing. Great time to be a white male. didn't work. People got tired of people that you couldn't tell they were good dancing or just in oxygen debt. And so they invented disco. Are you with me? Stop. That was the death of a white man right there. Let me continue. You've got to have convictions. You've got to have excellence. My point, after Woodstock, you know what we did in my generation? We had Expo 72. We had our gathering at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, and we left the Cotton Bowl cleaner than when we got there. And the whole world publicized the Christian kids are better than the rock musicians. And it ended up in kind of a mini revival in the 70s. And then, number 4, you got to be missional. Jesus said that he has come into the strong man's house, he has bound him, and now he is plundering his possessions. I'm going after them. You don't play hockey goalie with the world, students, and just try to defend your turf. You get preemptive and you go after them. I will convert you. You will not come after me. Go, therefore, and make disciples. You get after them. You know, when I trusted Christ, I heard the gospel over a guy came into my room, shared the gospel with my roommate. He listened to it. And it ricocheted off him. He blew it off and it hit me. I got converted. He asked my roommate, he said, what are you? Are you a Christian? He said, yeah, I'm a Christian. He said, what is a Christian? My roommate gave him what he thought the answer was. He said, it's somebody who keeps the 10 Commandments. That's what he thought. That's what I thought. He could have said a number of things. He could have said, name them. My roommate would have been in trouble. Even worse, he could have handed him the Bible and said, find him. He'd have really been in trouble. You know what he said? He said, you keep them. You never hate your neighbor. You always obey your parents. You don't covet anything. You seek after God 24/7. Is that you? My roommate was dead silent, and I was too. And he said, that's why Jesus Christ came and died on the cross, is you can't keep the law. And all of a sudden, the 2 Testaments came together, and I thought, that's why we have all the Easter eggs. That's why we have the Christmases. He came and he died and he rose because I can't keep the law. My life was never the same. I got converted. I thought I discovered something altogether new in Western civilization. I started reading my Bible. A guy that played offensive line. Did Kevin tell you I was a football player? Did he tell you I was one of the great athletes of the 20th century? I led North Texas State to 7 wins in my 4 years. But I lost 2 years through injuries, but nonetheless, I got saved, and I didn't know anybody else knew this, and I was reading my Bible. I was cutting class just so I could stay and read my Bible. I had found truth. You dig? I found truth. That was the greatest thing I ever found. And I could not, it started with in the beginning. It walked me through the story until Christ came and died, and the gospel went to the Gentiles, and he came back and whistled everybody else pooed. Second coming. And I thought, this is it. A guy comes up to me in the weight room, and he says, there's an offensive lineman. He said, what happened to you? I said, what do you mean? He said, you're not, and he looked for the words, he said, you're not dark anymore. You're happy, you're ugly. What happened to you? You want to know? I want to know. I want to tell you. Tell me. You know this Jesus stuff? He was a Church of Christ kid. You knew about Jesus. Yeah. I said, it's real. He is the Son of God. The Bible is true. He died and he rose from the dead. And all that stuff we're trying to find, we're not going to find it. He provided it. The heck you said. That's fact. He left away, went on for the summer. I came back for 2-day workouts. He greeted me in the athletic dorm. This guy never smiled. His name was John Bolt. You ever seen that cartoon, The Grinch, that stole Christmas? Remember how he smiled? He never smiled. Right? And he smiled at me. And I said, you did it. He said, I did. He said, I had a date with a girl that had the same story as you. I put the 2 together, and I got saved. I named my second-born son after this guy. He's still my best friend, John Knowles. Came into my room one day. John and I started rooming together. A guy that played center for us from Abilene Cooper. He was the head drug supplier on our team. All right. I think he left, as a matter of fact. He came down to our room, and he was sitting there talking to John, and John's telling him what I had told him about Christ. They were talking about the rapture. 2 offensive linemen talking about prophecy. That's frightening. And John looked at me and he said, Tom, he knew I was the scholar because I had a Bible. I've been a Christian 4 months. Tell him what you told me. I said to Clark, I told him what God told me. Clark got up, went down to his room, got saved, came back. John Bowles, Clark Lawrence. I named my second-born son John Clark after those two men. And you know what? I became a student teacher at Louisville High School. I shared the gospel with guys. They trusted Christ on a football team. Then they said, could you speak to the school? And I found out this was the greatest thing. No matter how you make your money, but to make your life introducing men and women to Jesus Christ. I said, this is what I've been looking for. Be smart, have convictions, excellence, be missional, and stay together. You stay together. You surround yourself with the best of men. You get back to back, and you start going through this world and start bringing people to faith and standing firm. You know, a man without Jesus is just a man wishing that there is a Jesus. If there was no Jesus, we would dream about Jesus. High schoolers, you got to find the three bigs. Who is my master? Christ or the devil? You don't pick one of them. What is my mission? Earthly glory or divine glory? You got to pick one. And who is my mate? Who am I going to do this with? I praise God for those three decisions. Because all of life is just the outworking of those three decisions. Christ is my master. His word is my standard. Souls, God, and glory is my goal. And I'm going to get a mate to run hand in hand with me. When you get married, you just look right and left at the person running the race for Christ the same level you are. And just see who's running next to you. All right? And then wave at them. Hey, how you doing? If they slow down, keep going. If they veer off, you stay straight. But after a while, you'll see that girl, you'll see that guy. And you just say, hey, come on. And you hold hands. And you run together. And you create humans. It's fantastic. If I died today, my wife would breathe for about an hour. Because she knows why she is here. And that's to see people come to Christ. And together we run. Those are the decisions you got to make. I'm going to pray. Father in heaven, thank you for this school. And Lord, I pray that their lives will be just half as good as their orchestra, their choir, their band, their arts, their drama. What talented, beautiful students. Beautiful as their countenance. I pray, God, that they would be rebels, that they would not be so weak to acquiesce to the slovenly failure of a system, of a God-less, standard-less society, an excellence-depraved society that has lost its sense of shame. I pray for radicals that at the root of their being, the radix of their soul, are possessed with the glory of God. That from this school would rise up heroes and stars that lead the many to righteousness and that hunger for wisdom. Raise up stars from this school. Let them never wander. Let them see each other 50 years from now and to say to each other, I'm still in the race. How about you? Thank you for these teachers. Thank you for these administrators. Thank you for these parents. Thank you for this building. May it be filled with excellence. And we'll pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.